Well, this is gonna be the scuffest gear guide I've ever made, but I just wanted to go a few over a few things. There is the picture on the screen right now, and you can kind of look through it to see kind of recommended units and whatnot. But the biggest things obviously is if you haven't gone over my Shadow Guide video yet, I do explain pretty much a lot of Shadow Hall stuff there already. So I'm probably not gonna explain much of the Shadow Hall gear today. I'll just go over it real quick right now, but it's pretty nonsensical to just understand that there's two rules to Shadow Hall gear. One is pretty much the best stuff is just Spectral Blaze, Spectral Bullet, and potentially Spectral Train, and everything else is pretty much terrible. You probably shouldn't use it. It's probably gonna cripple you, if anything. If you don't have enough CDR maze gear, Spectral Spirit could be used, but honestly, at that point, you would just use regular CDR gear on like Dante gear or SC gear. That would probably be better. Um, but the second rule is basically you cannot mix match Spectral gear with anything else. Spectral gear has its own set, and you cannot use exclusives with it unless you do like Elizabeth Pendragon. She could use that. You could use Spectral Bullet for 10% attack, 10% hit, and then two like attack or anti-range or anti-sniper, whatever your exclusive is on, and then one regular Dante or SC gear with attack on it. So you can mix match that way, but most characters like attack speed, CDR, or whatnot, so you're probably not going to be able to do that, especially like Xiaolin. Even though Xiaolin might like the attack speed or crit damage Spectral set, you could not use her exclusive that way. So mace gear or just SC gear is probably the most efficient way of using Xiaolin's gear. A few things I wanted to talk about with this guide is basically how much maze gear are you able to actually get? You can see that in the picture there are maze gears mixed match with hummingbird slash Gordius gear, your tank gear basically, right? Now this is pretty important simply because, damn, using maze gear with Gordius gear, it's pretty important. Why wouldn't you use it with your DPS? Now there's a few things to talk about here. Obviously, if you play the game, you realize that there are an equal amount of maze gears. There's 6 maze hands, probably in the future, as right now we only have 5. But there's like 6 maze hands, 6 armors, and only 6 accessories. Now, how do you make those 6 accessories equal? Because you only have 6 of them, right? So that means you can only make 3 complete maze sets, while you have 3 maze hands and 3 maze armors somewhere else. Now, with this in mind, you can actually just make what, 1 attack speed set and 2 CDR sets, maze hands and or maze set wise, and then everything else could be like maze HP to make tank sets along with it. You could do this. You could also do 1 extra CDR set with 1 courageous gear mixed match with it. That could also work. It's really personal opinion or personal bias here for this much at least, where you could use maze weapon and maze armor to make an HP set and then 2 Gordius gears. That could also be an option since you only get 2 hummingbird weapons at the moment. So it's pretty important to realize you're not gonna have enough maze weapons and you're not gonna have any maze arm or you're not gonna have any hummingbird weapons or any good armors for your tank set. So the solution is basically just to split what you can do. So obviously you have your Gordius gear, right? Your accessories, and then you have a missing weapon and armor. So there's only gonna be 2 weapons, right? Okay, bam, done. Those 2 weapons are done with HP tank gear. You're done. So how do you get the other gears? You could then use your HP maze weapon and an HP case. Now doing this frees up the accessory because you're not gonna use the accessory as a tank, you employee, and that extra mace accessory goes to that first mace set, where instead of mace weapon, mace armor, mace accessory, it now has the complete set of 4 mace equipment, and that's how your DPS gets the whole mace set. So you can use your maze armor and maze weapons out of the 6 sets you have to complete maze HP defense gear or HP evasion gear or whatever really. Mainly your maze weapon and maze armor are usually should be the set of HP so that your Gordius can be tuned to specific people, like evasion or defense, in that type of style. Now, it's kind of hard to like future plan in a sense because you realize there's a lot more gear coming out and whatnot, and we don't obviously have all the maze gears right now. But the biggest thing about maze is that it is pretty much the best equipment in the game, and we are limited. So, one of the things that counters need is attack speed. You only need like one set of attack speed for counters. You can use it for Amino when you're doing Danger Close. You could use it for Chifuyu. You could use it for Gaiun. You could use it for a lot of characters, mix, match, and whatnot. So attack speed maze is pretty important. You only need like one, and if there's a meta there's two, you're just gonna have to deal with it because some other characters need it more. Now, the rest of your DPS sets should just be CDR at this point. You might be able to get away with 3 CDR sets and then just have 2 maze defensive sets like HP. So that would mean your 4th maze set only has 1 accessory, since the other one is already complete with the other 3 accessories, because you're running, actually no, because if you're doing 4 DPS maze sets, that means you're only completing 2 sets because there's 2 defensive sets. This means your 4th set could just lose all the accessories and then just use 2 courageous or evasion once they come out. Evasion seasonal gear. And instead of the 2 base sets. Which honestly is fine for the most part. You're just gonna have to deal with it, in my opinion. And you get around-ish the same CDR. It is a bit of a cripple, but if you need another DPS set, that is there. Because I don't honestly think that you need 3 defensive maze gears. Being honest here. If anything, it might just cripple you, really. But, yeah. The biggest thing, though, is that you have your 3 to 4 CDR gears. Or 2 to 3 CDR gears and 1 attack speed gear for your counters. And then you have 2 defensive sets. So your 2 defensive sets could be used on 2 tanks or a DPS tank where they use CDR Gordius instead. So this way, your 4th CDR maze set might not be useless, simply because instead, like I said, those accessories that you are missing, those 2 accessories, you can now be replaced with CDR Gordius gear. You have enough Gordius gear to do this, meaning you can make a CDR tanky type unit, which is like Xiang or Twins, etc. like that. You could have maze a weapon, or you can do maze or a hummingbird weapon. It could be either or. There's a lot of mix matching here, but that is basically the type of building you would do for your tanky counters, and it's possible that way. Now, you might ask, what if you have a lot of tanks, right? What if you don't have that armor anymore? No more access to the armor. Well, your only thing now, your only like armor now that you could actually slot in is basically Dante gear. You would not use super conduct gear because that's crit damage. You really shouldn't use that on a tank. But Dante armor is probably the best armor out of, or the best Dante gear out of the whole set, simply because you get a fixed stat of a flat defense, evasion, or HP, while you get ground res for your set option too. It's the best one out of the Dante set because this is the only one that the tanks actually need to use because they don't have anything else to use. The Dante armor is actually really, really useful if you roll HP on it, simply because getting that flat stat for a tank that is lacking that stat is actually really, really beneficial instead of a percentage. And obviously, since you don't have any more maze armors to fix all these tanks that are missing armor, Dante armor is pretty much the best option you can go for. It's actually pretty much the only option you can go for, unless you want crit damage on your tanks, which, again, go for it if you want. But that's pretty much the general consensus on how to like mix match maze gear and how to optimally get your maze gear. The summary is pretty much, for counters, 1 attack speed, 2 to 3 CDRs, and the rest is tanks, so that those accessories go back to the other ones, the other DPS sets. Now you might ask, what about soldiers and mechs? A little bit less explanation here, but obviously this should make sense to you that soldiers, 1 CDR set for characters that need CDR, and there are characters. Trust me, there are characters. I could probably look it up right now, but I want to make this video as short as possible. Um, one CDR set for soldiers, and then everything else attack speed, just full on damage. Now, you could have one tank here. You can use it for Minwoo. He is a tank, pretty sure. And he uses HP, I believe. So making one HP defense set isn't the end of the world. It could be the same concept, but I would definitely recommend that for the most part. But I really think you only need like one set or two sets, but you could just use two defensive sets. You really shouldn't need that much for a soldier team. But two defensive sets shouldn't be that bad, obviously. As always, accessories go back to the other sets, all that stuff, right? Now, for mechs, same concept, right? But definitely for your tanks, obviously, you're gonna use Gordius gear and then that one base HP gear, all that good stuff. Now, what do the rest of your mechs need? So you're honestly gonna need two CDR gears, one for Sigma, another for Sigma. Jokes aside, well, honestly, it's not really a joke. You probably would use that for two Sigmas for Danger Close, but there are other mechs that could use CDR, so honestly, it's not a bad idea. But everything else should be attack speed, simply because Ifrit, Giannis, a lot of these characters use attack speed, and that's definitely what you want to run on them. So Mei's attack speed on mechs is the best option. Other than that, obviously you do have your HP sets that could, mix match all that stuff as I explained before. Moving on to that, we have SC gear. Obviously, SC gear is the DPS crit damage gear. You could use that for characters like Jane Doe if you're going to DPS set, or probably best to just go if you're simply going to build Jane Doe straight up, then and you want to invest in attack speed on her, Gordius attack speed is probably the best thing for her. Other than that, crit damage for Xiaolin is the most optimal choice, as you're not wasting any maze gear for all that stuff. Other than that, you also have your Spectral gear, as I explained in the video before. Spectral gear is used on a lot of characters. I'll just name a few of them right now. For mechs, obviously you have Ifrit, you have Giannis. For Rosaria, you have Spectral Bullet, simply because she really wants that hit chance, and there's no reason not to go 2+2 attack, simply because it gives 20% attack in total, when you can go 2+2 Spectral Bullet, which gives 20% attack and 20% hit. She does not have exclusive gear, so why not, right? And her option 1 is pretty good, as her job is basically to kill a specific unit. Amina can also use it as well if you don't have enough attack speed sets, like I explained before. Obviously, for old admin, they are very strong with Spirit set, or not the Spirit set, but the Spectral set, or probably Spectral Blaze as the attack speed one. And it, again, saves the amount of maze you would use if you didn't have enough attack speed sets. So yeah, you really don't have to worry too much about, maze attack speed or maze CDR sets as you would, because once you run out, you have Spectral gear to fall back on. So a lot of videos in KR do show that they do use at least 2 sets, maybe 3 of HP gear on maze. Reason why, I already told you, those 3 base sets those 3 maze accessories goes back to the other 3 DPS sets. So it's pretty limiting. If we use this as a standard, you would have to do a few things. There would be, for mechs and soldiers, you would use 1 CDR and 2 attack speed. For counters, you would use 1 attack speed and 2 CDRs. And this is pretty limiting, considering the fact that you might want to do 3 CDRs, 2 defensive, and 1 attack speed for counters, simply because counters really don't have access to much CDR gear. It's really limiting. So I very much recommend at least 3 CDRs for counters, simply because Spectral Spear is just bad. It's not worth it at all if you want to go CDR. It's really not worth. So running a Spectral Spirit is probably the worst thing you could do if you're trying to go CDR, because the max is pretty much around 40% instead of like 70 or 80, right? So going for 3 maze CDRs isn't that bad of an option, simply because when it can even be a tank tank set. Like for your 4 CDR, it would be going into that reserve of defensive gear, right? Like HP, maze, armor, uh, weapon, and 2 accessories, right? So you would use Gordius instead. So if you have 2 Gordius CDRs and 1 CDR weapon and 1 CDR armor, that could work. That could be another CDR set. It's kind of hard to explain without like stuff to move around without the gear, because I don't have that much gear yet. So this picture is all I can really provide. But that's pretty much it for the most part. Hopefully this does help a bit more in like your future plannings for gear. Pretty much the biggest things I guess I would want to list for this video is that you have 1 attack speed. I'm gonna type this out right now, but you have 1 attack speed and 2 CDRs or 3 CDR with 2 to 3 HP defensive sets or maze or counters specifically. And then yeah. Well, I'm gonna go type this out, but pretty much hopefully this does help you guys out a little bit more. I couldn't really provide a total full guide since I obviously don't have the gear yet, but hopefully this does help. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys later.